There are artifacts sitting in museum storage rooms right now that don't fit anywhere in our understanding of ancient history. Not because they're poorly documented, not because they're controversial, but because acknowledging them would require rewriting entire chapters of human civilization. These aren't legend. They're physical objects, measured, photographed, and analyzed by credentialed experts who can't explain what they're looking at. Lock your doors, put your headphones on, because after this, you'll never trust a history textbook the same way again. The Fuente Magna bowl. If you've studied ancient Sumerian cuneiform, you know it's one of the oldest writing systems on Earth, developed in Mesopotamia around 3400 BCE. It was used in what is now modern Iraq, thousands of miles from South America. So explain this. In 1958, a farmer plowing his field near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia unearthed a large ceramic bowl covered in inscriptions. When archaeologists examined it, they identified two distinct writing systems carved into its surface. One was a local pre-Incan script. The other was Sumerian cuneiform. Dr. Clyde Ahmed Winters, a linguist specializing in ancient scripts, analyzed the Sumerian text in 2000. His translation indicated the bowl was used in religious ceremonies and contained references to Mesopotamian deities. But here's the problem. Lake Titicaca is in the Andes Mountains of South America. Sumerian civilization existed in Mesopotamia, over 12,000 kilometers away, separated by the Atlantic Ocean. No credible historical evidence suggests Sumerians had transoceanic navigation capabilities. No artifacts in Mesopotamia reference South American contact. The bowl's existence contradicts every accepted model of ancient trade and migration. The Bolivian government declared the bowl a national artifact but refused to allow independent testing. When Dr. Winters applied for permits to conduct radiocarbon dating on organic residue found inside the bowl, his requests were denied. The official reason cited was preservation of cultural heritage. The bowl is currently held at the Museo de Oro in La Paz, where it's displayed without explanation of its Sumerian inscriptions. Museum literature describes it simply as a ceremonial vessel of unknown origin. One archaeologist who examined the bowl off the record, Dr. Bernardo Iacovazzo from the Universidad Mayor de San Andres, described the inscriptions as disturbingly authentic. He said the depth and consistency of the cuneiform carvings matched Mesopotamian techniques used during the Uruk period, approximately 3200 BCE. That dating, if accurate, would make this bowl one of the oldest written artifacts in the Americas. Except that no writing systems existed in South America during that era. The earliest known Andean script, the Quipiu, wouldn't appear for another 2,500 years. So either the bowl is an elaborate hoax, which forensic analysis of the ceramic material contradicts, or Sumerian cuneiform made it to South America 5,000 years ago, and no one knows how. Let's move to the next artifact, the Baghdad Battery. In 1936, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig was cataloging artifacts at the National Museum of Iraq when he noticed a terracotta jar that didn't match any known pottery function. The jar, dated to approximately 200 BCE during the Parthian period, contained a copper cylinder with an iron rod suspended inside. The cylinder was sealed with asphalt. Koenig recognized the configuration. It was a galvanic cell, a primitive battery. When replicas of the Baghdad Battery were constructed and filled with an acidic solution like vinegar or wine, they produced a measurable electrical current of approximately 1.1 volts. Not enough to power anything substantial, but undeniable evidence of electrochemical reaction. The problem is, our historical understanding places the discovery of electricity in the 18th century, over 1900 years after this jar was buried. Dr. Paul Craddock, a metallurgist from the British Museum, examined the artifact in 2003. He confirmed that the copper and iron showed signs of corrosion consistent with galvanic activity. He also noted that multiple similar jars had been found at the same archaeological site, suggesting they weren't anomalies. They were intentionally manufactured. What were the Parthians using 1.1-volt batteries for? Some researchers, including electrical engineer Arne Egebrecht, proposed they were used for electroplating, a process that coats objects with a thin layer of metal. Engelbrecht conducted experiments in 1978 and successfully electroplated a silver figurine using a replica Baghdad battery. His results were published, then largely ignored by mainstream archaeology. The Baghdad battery was stored in the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad. In 2003, during the Iraq War, the museum was looted. The battery disappeared. Its current location is unknown. No comprehensive scientific study was ever conducted on the original artifact. The German archaeologist Wilhelm König, who first identified it, published his findings in 1940, but his work was dismissed by most scholars as speculative. He died in 1940, never able to defend his conclusions. What makes this artifact particularly troubling is that multiple similar jars were found, and all of them showed the same internal configuration: copper cylinder, iron rod, asphalt seal. That's not accidental craftsmanship. That's a standardized design, which means someone in the Parthian Empire understood electrochemistry well enough to manufacture functional batteries at scale. 1900 years before Alessandro Volta invented the modern battery in 1799. If this technology existed in 200 BCE, why did it disappear? Why isn't there a continuous technological lineage? And why do modern historians treat this discovery as an uncomfortable footnote rather than a paradigm-shifting revelation? Here's Artifact 3. The Antikythera mechanism, found in 1901 by sponge divers exploring a shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera, Greece. This device looked like a corroded lump of bronze gears. It sat in storage at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens for decades before anyone realized what it was. In the 1950s, physicist Derek J.J. de Sola Price began studying the mechanism in detail. What he discovered redefined our understanding of ancient Greek engineering. The Antikythera mechanism is an analog computer, built around 100 BCE, designed to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance. It contains at least 30 bronze gears, some with teeth as small as 1 millimeter, arranged in a configuration that calculates the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with extraordinary precision. The level of mechanical sophistication required to design and construct this device wasn't seen again in human history until medieval astronomical clocks appeared in the 14th century. Over 1,300 years later, Dr. Tony Freeth, a mathematician and filmmaker who led a comprehensive study of the mechanism using advanced X-ray tomography in 2006, described it as more complex than any other artifact from the ancient world. The device didn't just track celestial movements. It corrected for the irregular orbit of the moon using a pin and slot mechanism that predicted lunar velocity variations. That level of understanding requires knowledge of epicyclic theory, a mathematical model that wasn't formalized until the work of Hipparchus, whose writings have been almost entirely lost. The Antikythera mechanism raises one terrifying question. If ancient Greeks possessed the engineering skill to create this device, what else did they build that we've lost? The mechanism wasn't unique. Ancient texts reference similar devices. Cicero, the Roman philosopher, wrote in the 1st century BCE about a machine created by Archimedes that modeled the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. That device is lost. No trace of it remains. The Antikythera mechanism might be the only survivor of an entire class of ancient technology we've forgotten existed. And here's what bothers me most. This device was found in a shipwreck. It was being transported somewhere, which means it wasn't a one-of-a-kind curiosity locked in a private collection. It was functional technology in active use, traveling across the Mediterranean. How many more mechanisms were lost at sea? How many were melted down for their bronze? How many were destroyed by time, and we'll never know they existed? Let's talk about Artifact 4, the Piri Reis map. In 1929, scholars working in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul discovered a gazelle skin parchment map drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis. The map shows the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and, most controversially, the northern coast of Antarctica. That last part is the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years after Piri Reis drew this map. And the map doesn't just show Antarctica's coastline. It shows the coastline as it would appear without ice. The detailed geographical features depicted on the map match modern sub-ice topography, mapping conducted using ground-penetrating radar in 1949. How did a 16th-century Ottoman cartographer draw the ice-free coastline of a continent that wouldn't be discovered for another 3 centuries? Piri Reis himself provided an explanation in his notes. He wrote that he compiled the map from approximately 20 source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE. He specifically mentioned maps created during the reign of Alexander that depicted the western lands. If those source maps existed, they're now lost. No copies have been found since. Professor Charles Hapgood, a historian from Keene State College, analyzed the Piri Reis map in the 1960s. His conclusion, published in his book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, was that the map showed evidence of an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization with sophisticated cartographic knowledges. Hapgood's work was dismissed by mainstream historians as speculative, but the map itself remains an undeniable artifact. It exists. It shows Antarctica's coastline with geographic accuracy that shouldn't be possible. In 1960, the U.S. Air Force evaluated the map at Hapgood's request. Their response, signed by Harold Z. Olmaya, Lieutenant Colonel, USAF Commander, stated, "The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of geographical knowledge in 1513. That letter exists. It's archived. And no credible explanation has been provided for how Piri Reis obtained information about ice-free Antarctic coastlines in 1513. If you're still watching, thank you. Leave a like if these artifacts have made you question what we've been taught, and tell us in the comments which discovery unsettles you most. Because we're only halfway through. Artifact 5. The Koso Artifact. In 1961, 3 rockhounds, Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike McCassell, were searching for geodes in the Koso Mountains of California. They found a rock that, when sliced open, revealed a metallic object embedded inside. The object appeared to be a mechanical component, cylindrical with a metal shaft running through its center, surrounded by what looked like a ceramic insulator. When examined under X-ray, the internal structure resembled a modern spark plug. Geologists estimated the rock encasing the object was at least 500,000 years old, based on the fossilized shells embedded in its matrix. If that dating is accurate, the object inside predates modern humans. Homo sapiens didn't exist 500,000 years ago. Neither did spark plugs. The Koso artifact was analyzed by several independent researchers, including Pierre Stromberg and Paul V. Heinrich, both of whom concluded it was likely a 1920s-era champion spark plug that became encased in a concretion, a hardened mineral deposit that can form rapidly around metallic objects under specific environmental conditions. That explanation makes sense, except for one problem. The rockhounds who found it swore the rock they cut open was part of a solid geological formation, not a modern concretion. Virginia Maxey maintained until her death in 2012 that the artifact was genuinely ancient. The Koso artifact disappeared after being loaned for analysis. Its current whereabouts are unknown. No further research has been conducted. The Vondirsaken, the Antikythera, the 10th ray images taken in the 1960s still exist, and they clearly show a mechanical device embedded in a mineralized matrix. Whether it's 500,000 years old or 100 years old remains unresolved because the artifact can't be located for modern testing. Here's what bothers me about this one. If it's a hoax or a misidentified modern object, why did it disappear? Why wasn't it debunked definitively with carbon dating and material analysis? And if it's genuine, What does it mean to find a mechanical component in a rock formation 500,000 years old? Final artifact: the Dropa stones. In 1938, Chinese archaeologist Chipute led an expedition into the remote Bayankara Ulam Mountains on the border between China and Tibet. In a series of caves, they discovered graves arranged in rows, each containing skeletons with unusually large skulls and fragile bone structures. Alongside the graves were 716 stone discs, each about 30 centimeters in diameter with a hole in the center, and spiral grooves radiating outward, resembling ancient phonograph records. When examined more closely, the grooves weren't decorative. They were inscriptions, tiny hieroglyphics carved in a spiral pattern from the center to the edge of each disc. In 1962, Chinese linguist Tsum Nui claimed to have translated the inscriptions. According to his translation, the discs told the story of a spacecraft that crash-landed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. The survivors, called the Dropa, were stranded and eventually integrated with local populations. Tsum Nui's translation was published briefly in a journal before being retracted. He was reportedly forced to leave academia. Beijing Academy of Sciences later issued a statement saying the discs were ceremonial objects with no linguistic content. However, researchers who examined the discs in the 1960s reported that the stone contained unusually high concentrations of cobalt and other metallic elements, causing the discs to hum when exposed to electrical currents. That detail was documented by Soviet researcher Vyacheslav Zayazev in 1968. The Dropa stones disappeared from public view in the 1970s. Some claim they're stored in Chinese government archives. Others suggest they were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. Photographs of the discs exist, but no physical specimens are available for modern analysis. Requests by international researchers to examine the discs have been denied by Chinese authorities. Here's the pattern: Fuente Magna bowl, Baghdad battery, Antikythera mechanism, Piri Reis map, Koso artifact, Dropa stones. 6 artifacts, 6 impossibilities, and 6 cases where further research has been blocked, denied, or made impossible through loss of the original objects. Why does this keep happening? Why do artifacts that challenge historical timelines end up classified, disappeared, or dismissed? The evidence exists. The photographs exist. The scientific analyses exist. But the conclusions those artifacts demand are too uncomfortable to integrate into mainstream history. Dr. Michael Cremo, a researcher specializing in archaeological anomalies, calls this the knowledge filtery. He argues that discoveries contradicting established timelines are systematically suppressed, not through conspiracy, but through institutional inertia. Archaeologists who study conventional artifacts get funding. Those who pursue anomalies get labeled fringe. Museums that display accepted history get visitors. Those that exhibit controversial artifacts get skepticism. So these 6 artifacts sit in storage, or vanish, or remain catalogued as origin unknown. And the questions they raise are buried alongside them. If the Baghdad battery proves ancient cultures understood electrochemistry, what else did they understand? If the Antikythera mechanism shows Greeks built analog computers in 100 BCE, what other machines did they create? If the Piri Reis map accurately depicts Antarctica without ice, who mapped it, and when? If the Dropa stones really do contain inscriptions about a crash landing, what are we refusing to look at? Here's what we know for certain. These artifacts exist. They were found by credentialed archaeologists. They were analyzed by scientists. And they don't fit, not because they're fake, but because accepting them as genuine means admitting our timeline of human history is incomplete. Maybe that's why they stay hidden, because some discoveries don't expand knowledge, they shatter it. And the institutions built on that knowledge will do everything they can to keep the pieces from being reassembled. Subscribe if you want us to keep investigating the artifacts that history forgot or chose to forget. Tell us which of these 6 artifacts disturbs you most. And remember, these aren't myths. They're real objects. documented and photographed, sitting somewhere in storage, waiting for someone brave enough to ask the questions they demand. Because the past isn't what we've been told. It's what they let us see.